right, let's go ahead and start our reading here in Psalm 37. And I'm just going to go ahead and read the entire psalm. It's not super long, and I know that our scripture in our read through shows like a specific section, but I'm going to go ahead and read the whole thing for us. He will not forsake his saints. Of David. Fret not yourselves because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourselves in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the new day. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourselves over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourselves, it tends only to evil. For the evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. In just a little while the wicked will be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant peace. Isn't that wonderful? The wicked plots against the righteous and gnashes his teeth at him. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he sees his day is coming. The wicked draw the sword and bend their bows, to bring down the poor and needy, to slay those whose way is upright. Their sword shall enter their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. Better is the little that the righteous has than the abundance of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous. The Lord knows the days of the blameless, and their heritage will remain forever. They are not put to shame in evil times. In the days of famine they will have abundance. But the wicked will perish. The enemies of the Lord are like the glory of the pastures. They vanish. Like smoke they vanish away. The wicked borrows, but does not pay back. But the righteous is generous and gives. For those blessed by the Lord shall inherit the land, but those cursed by him shall be cut off. The steps of the man are established by the Lord, when he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be cast headlong, for the Lord upholds his hand. I have been young, and now I am old. Yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, or his children begging for bread. He is ever lending generously, and his children become a blessing. Turn away from evil and do good. So shall you dwell forever. For the Lord loves justice. He will not forsake his saints. They are preserved forever, but the children of the wicked shall be cut off. The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell upon it forever. The mouth of the righteous utters wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice. The law of his God is in his heart. His steps do not slip. The wicked watches for the righteous and seeks to put him to death. The Lord will not abandon him to his power or let him be condemned when he is brought to trial. Wait for the Lord and keep his way, and he will exalt you to inherit the land. You will look on when the wicked are cut off. I have seen a wicked, ruthless man spreading himself like a green laurel tree, but he passed away, and behold, he was no more. Though I sought him, he could not be found. Mark the blameless and behold the upright, for there is a future for the man of peace. But transgressors shall be altogether destroyed. The future of the wicked shall be cut off. The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their stronghold in the time of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them, because they take refuge in him. So visually, I think the Psalms are absolutely amazing because they have so much beautiful language written as songs and poetry. You know, they tend to be filled with words that are very visually depictive. So I think that it's easy in a sense to work through the Psalms as a Bible journaler because there's so many words that you can circle or underline or highlight as you read that really already say the things that we might be able to use as images for remembering. And so the piece of scripture that, you know, this whole psalm, Psalm 37, has this idea of, you know, the righteous before God thriving where the wicked fades away. And so I went right to the beginning of this passage and I just was really drawn to this imagery of, for they will soon fade like grass and wither like a green herb. And it says something very similar to that in the back as it talks about, let me see right here. Let me see which verse it is in. Right here. In verse 35, it says, I have seen a wicked, ruthless man spreading himself like a laurel tree, but he passed away, and behold, there was no more. So again, it kind of goes back to that green imagery. So we're going to be working on some greenery, and really one piece of greenery, and we're going to kind of make some withering plants to represent the wicked versus the righteous before God. So let's go ahead with our little mini lesson here before we get started. And I do want to make a special note to let you know that on our website, where we link up all of our read-through videos, there is going to be a link to a visual guide that will be, you can use it as traceable, or you can just use it as a reference point to be able to draw some of these little potted plants. So I want to make sure that you know that, but I do want to go through kind of how to draw like a cylinder style plant. So when we do a cylinder, there's a few basic things that we need to keep in mind. Number one, hey guys, here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to use these three materials today as I talk, so let me say that first. Pencil, Sharpie marker, and then the red pen. So I may have to do a little sketching myself, but when I'm showing you the sketching lines, I'm going to use this red pen. And that way you can kind of see what my sketches look like. And then you can see the final part with the Sharpie. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's get back to it. So with a cylinder, we always want to make sure that our circle at the top is very flat. And what this really shows is the perspective in which you're looking at the object. So if we were looking at a jar from the, you know, we were looking like inside of the jar, we would have more of an open top, and we'd be looking down inside of it. We might see the bottom somewhere in there. But as our perspective, so this is kind of looking inside of the jar, but as our perspective comes across, let's say we're looking straight across something, we might just be like this. And we're looking straight at the side of something. So we have to somehow get in between here. One of the biggest mistakes made when we're drawing a cylinder is that we draw our oval too open. So I want you to really think about that, having a flat, skinny opening there on the top. And then what we do here is really cool. So we're going to start with basic cylinders, and then we're going to form them into the shapes that we want. And you'll see how I do that in just a second. So this is representing the container that we'll start with. And what I want you to think about doing is taking this line right here, this bottom curve, and I want you to copy it in your mind and paste it where you think it needs to be. So we're copying the curve along with the length, and we're bringing it down here. And I think I went a little bit too big, so I'm going to go somewhere like that, okay? And now what I'm going to do is connect this outside line with the outside, the furthest point of that flat. So at the very point in which it starts to turn the other way, we're going to bring those lines down and connect them. And that's how we form a very accurate cylinder. So this would be like a little pop can, okay? If we imagine a little pop can such as this, there's our little tab, and there's the inside of the can. Okay, so let's keep this in mind. Here's a couple of the mistakes. I already pointed out one. One would be going something like this and connecting it. This is too much. This is too open, okay? So this would be a not to do. The other thing that happens often is that we end up having the big circle here, and then we connect our lines like this, and our circle kind of hangs over the edge. This is also a not to do. So we're going for flat, skinny, copy and paste those curves, and then straight lines to connect. I just realized one more not to do. This often happens as well. We might have this, and then we have this. This is a not to do. We want the curve here to be the curve here. All right, hopefully that helps. So those are the not tos and the twos. Hopefully that little drawing session will work. All right, so let's go ahead and just think about how we're going to plan this page. Now we want to have odd numbers are good. 3 is fine. I ended up going with 4 just because I ended up starting a little bit small. But we're going to talk about here having like a little, I want to think about this like a little herb garden that you might see in your windowsill. And oftentimes herb gardens come with some sort of a tray-like feature. Okay, so this is cool because if we do this tray-like feature to get started, we do not even have to worry about that copy paste the bottom line because the bottom line will be hidden inside. So imagine this is like a deep dish. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start by taking this space and drawing in very basic. And of course, I would be doing this with my pencil. And now imagine looking through this, we would have that bottom line would be somewhere in there sitting inside. We don't care about that right now, so we don't even have to worry. And then I'm going to go ahead and maybe I'll do one that's a little shorter and a little wider. Okay. Now you can see I'm just doing basic cylinders right now. And this one here, I'm going to have it kind of come down skinny, and I'm going to leave some extra space here because I'm going to do kind of a cool finish on this one. All right, so all of these cylinders are representing 3 different pots, okay? Pots for plants to sit in. Containers. Now, this would be pretty boring. Could it work? Absolutely. And you could have a lot of fun. You could actually use washi tape to fill these in and just keep them really cool looking cylinders. I think that would be super fun. I think I'm going to be adding some washi tape to a couple of these. But I want to change the shape of some of these. We know that pots come in all different shapes and sizes. Some have kind of a smaller opening and bell out. Some of them have a little motion to them. And so we're going to go ahead and use our pen. I am going to use my pen. You would be using your pencil to show you kind of how we can reshape some of these cylinders. So let's say on this one, I'm going to go traditional flower pot. I'm going to go ahead and trace this opening. And of course, I want to leave room for my stem until I finish, but I want to see inside of this a little bit. And what I'm going to do is actually copy and paste that curve right here, okay? Because on those traditional flower pots, we see that nice thick band. And then what I'm going to do is instead of coming straight down, I'm going to taper it. I want to make this look like it is tapered in. But because I started with that cylinder, I can be very successful drawing right over the top of it and make a really cool looking pot. Okay, this next one we're going to go a little more modern, and we're actually going to put a little pattern on this one as well. So with this pot, I'm actually going to curve this out a little bit. So I'm going to curve out the edges. Okay. And I'm going to also add a teeny little rim, just like I did on that last one. But I'm going to squeeze it up there just a little bit. Oops. I'd leave some room for where that comes out. Now the cool thing is here, now I could really have some fun kind of trying to think about like a little pattern. Sometimes when we're making ceramics, there's little, pieces that kind of like, what would you say, relief off of it, embossed off of it. So let's just do something kind of fun on this pot, a little different. Okay, now this one is going to be more like a vase style. So we're going to have that skinnier piece up here, which we'll just go ahead and start with. Something like that. But I'm actually going to curve this in and then curve it out. Curve it in and curve it out. And I don't want to come to a point here. Remember, our pots are hidden inside. So the pots that we have would probably look something like this if they were sitting on the inside. Okay, so imagine that. But here we have this little planter kind of holding them all together, this little tray. And that's what we're going to see on the outside. And I think this is kind of cool because you could, once this is all not there, you could do some writing right on this. And I think that would be really cool. Okay, so there's your little lesson on some flower pots, some cylinder shapes. And I'm going to make sure that you are getting some of those different kinds of shapes and such for you. Just like I mentioned on the website, when you go to thebrightbible.com, there is a tab at the top that says Read Through 2020. Some of you might already know that because that might be how you found this video. But if you don't already know that that exists, you're going to want to click on it, and it shows you all of our videos. And if there are any resources, they will be attached right there at the bottom of those videos. Let's go ahead and get this transferred over to our Bible, and you guys can see how we put it together. Those pots outlined, we're going to go ahead and start working on some of the greenery, so to speak. Some of it is green and some of it is not so green. Let's go ahead and start with this plant here. So what I'm doing is I'm using a very kind of bubbly leaf. And so think about this maybe like an upside down raindrop. So as the stems come up, what I'm doing is creating these big bubbly leaves. And I'm kind of offsetting them. You can see I'm kind of offsetting them, but filling them in too. I mean, you got to kind of play with this as you go, but they're very bubbly. And then at the top, I just kind of have what might be a little flowering bud, something like that. Okay, so that would be great. I do try to leave my stems kind of hollow, if you will, so that I can color them in. And this one, we're going to kind of give a nice root system that's kind of up above. So you'll see that here when I start to sketch this one in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as we talk. I think for this particular passage, the feeling that I got was just this beautiful sense of thriving versus withering away. And it is so difficult sometimes when we're in the midst of crisis or we're in the midst of, worldly things that we're surrounded by every day, right? And I think this imagery of a plant that kind of withstands the storm, maybe lack of sunlight or lack of nutrition, and interpret that metaphorically, however you might need to for your own self. But that in the midst of all of those things, they are still blooming and they're still thriving. And I think that is the picture for me that I really got from this verse, is that when we have Christ in our life and He's directing our path and we're seeking Him out daily, we can withstand a whole lot. And when the world is fading away and the wicked are prospering, it's so tempting sometimes to say, oh, that's not fair, and it's so frustrating. But they will not be able to withhold the storm the way that we will by having Christ in our life. And I think that's just a really beautiful imagery. And I wanted to be able to put that into visual here of, some of us, we've seen this imagery, sadly, because maybe we don't have the green thumb that we wish that we had. But this idea of having these herbs just in our windowsill or in our kitchens or gardens, and having all of them be a disaster except for that one that continues to thrive. And so I hope that imagery is something that you can relate to, and that you kind of understand where my thinking was on that one. So, and of course, I love to encourage you guys, less copy and more of your own original thoughts. So if there was another piece of scripture in this passage, because this is a doozy, there's a lot there. And if something struck a chord with you, I highly encourage you to just roll with it and to mark this passage in your Bible the way that you need to really feel that you were able to kind of digest it and take it for what you needed to see. Okay, so the next one here is our kind of branch-like. Maybe some of these branches are a little broken off. And so for branches, I'd like to wiggle my pen. So as I draw, instead of creating straight lines for branches, which we often have that issue with, we're going to wiggle our pen and simply just wiggle next to it a little differently, and you'll end up having these kind of twig-like branches. Now, the concept of branches is often a little bit like, how do I say this? a little bit overthought, okay? So there is a system that I used to teach middle schoolers this system for drawing trees. But the concept really is this. There's two pieces, right? One branch, but two lines that represent this whole branch. And then we stick the letter V in them. And when we stick the letter V, we simply just move those lines up, and we end up having two branches instead of one. And if we continue this pattern of kind of doing these V's, we can continuously grow our plants. And sometimes we might just have one V. We might V off here, something like this. Whoa, I got a little crazy there. But the idea is that we're continuously growing those V's, so we're duplicating as we go. And once you kind of get the hang of that concept, it will come a little bit easier. But the biggest thing I think for you is just to remember to use those loosey-goosey kind of wiggly lines as you are drawing in your branches. So something like that. This one here, I'm going to kind of purposely make to look as though it has been broken. So I'm going to kind of just connect on the corner only. So I'll go out like this, and then I'll just kind of come down. Maybe this one has a little piece coming off there. And again, going up. So here was the V on that one. Now this one stopped short while this one continued to prosper. So I'm going to continue to go up. There's my bigger V. And as I come down, I'll do another V. Okay. And then I've got one more here in the pot. Another little part that tried to grow back here. And again, give it a little twiggy there. Okay, so there's kind of our scraggly old branch. So I look at that one and think maybe it was a little rosemary plant. All the little pieces have fallen off, right? You could even have some things fallen down in here, little pieces that have fallen off to show that it is a goner, right? Okay, so our last one here, I'm going to kind of do the same on these ends. They'll look a little differently, but the same idea here is kind of those withered away leaves. And so the same concept applies with the branching of the stems. But for the leaf part, I want you to imagine if the leaf had been a well-prospering leaf, maybe it had looked something like this, right? So imagine this kind of crumpled up and folded over. So I'm going to try to just bring it down kind of abrasively, kind of rough. And I might even have some pieces that kind of branch up like that. So it kind of appears wilted, you know, kind of facing down, and then having those pieces that kind of go off. And oftentimes you can kind of make them look even twisted if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and get some of these in there as well. And again, this one is really all about bringing them down kind of on the side so that it looks as though they have kind of fallen over the edge and are no longer in very good shape. Okay, and we'll have some of these here. This is great where you can kind of bring them over your page, which is why it's important to kind of pre-sketch what you're wanting. In this case, I had left myself a little opening there so that I could draw this plant to have those greens kind of coming over the sides. Something like that. And you can, you know, it depends on how detailed you want to be here and how many of these things you want to have. I like to have some places to give a little bit of color later when we do our colored pencil. I am going to be using a very traditional just colored pencil. I might do some gelatos in the background, but I think I'm going to actually, instead of doing hand lettering, I would like to use some alpha stickers. I think I have so many of them and I underuse them, and they are just kind of fun, especially when you have something that's such a big amount to look at here. Using some alpha stickers kind of switches things up a little bit. And I think I'm going to just add one more of these little areas here so that I can have something kind of filling that spot. There we go. Okay, so that looks pretty pathetic, which is what we were trying to go for. So I think it's been a success. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish this last withering plant over here, and then we'll come back together here after the time lapse and we can get some coloring done. So I've gone ahead and grabbed some washi tape out, and what I've done here is I've really considered my colors. Which of the choices maybe are more natural, just kind of and then one that's kind of bright and fancy. And I think when you're thinking about things like this, really, if you've got a purpose there that or something that you're trying to communicate, go all out with it and communicate it right down to, you know, every little detail. So I'm going to go ahead and do this first. Now, I do suggest that you would color your color things in first. I'm going to kind of just use these as little decorations here on each of the pots, and then I'll be coloring around them. And of course, I'll use more colors than just these dready colors, but I did think this was a good opportunity to kind of just accentuate with a little pattern of design. I love using washi when I can. I have so much of it, and I really do love all the patterns and colors, and it does save quite a bit of time, right? So you can have your fancy design, and you can have a little bit of texture on the page without having to do a whole lot of work. So I'll just get these on here. What I was saying though is this might be an area where you color first and then you kind of add in your washi, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and do my washi first. You can see how I'm going to work with that. Just get these in here. And I'll trim as close as I can here with these. I've got this cool little, it's like a brown and black or tan and black set. So I had a bunch of those same kind of colors, or just like a little color scheme worth of washi. So that worked out well to be able to represent each of those. And let's see, this last one here kind of has like a scaly mark. I think what I'm going to do is, let's see, go right under that heavy part there. I like to just lay it down and then you put my scissors right on that black line and try to get it as close as I can. Whoops. To do a little trimming, that's okay. But this way, I've got a little extra something something on those pots. Kind of acts as a little colorful band and uses up a little bit of washi tape. I know you guys don't have that problem, do you? Nobody has the washi tape problem, right? Or it's a happy problem to have. Okay, let me just trim a little bit here, and boom. Okay, so we'll go ahead with that. I'll get this last one on here, and then I will be working with colored pencils, and we're going to go ahead and we'll time lapse up the rest of this. You guys know some of the tricks that I talk about with colored pencils, things like using 3 colors. So I'll be trying to kind of create an illusion of light to dark. So think about that when you have your 3 color choices, a light, a bright, and a dark shade. And sometimes that dark shade can even be a more neutral color. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to use pink and magenta, and then my dark color might be like a rich purple. Or if I'm using a red, I might use kind of a orangey red, a bright red, and then maybe I'll go all the way as far as brown. Okay, so there's just some details on our little flower pots, and I'll speed up the drawing so that you guys can see the coloring in. So as I've been working here, I actually kind of like how this turned out with this bright green prospering plant next to these plants that are kind of still in black and white. So I'm very tempted. I may actually just leave them that way. We'll have to see. You'll have to see at the end of the video here how this all turns out. But what I am missing here a little bit is some color in the background. So what I'm using is a distressed crayon and a sponge. These are just a blender sponge. You can use makeup sponges. You can use them wet or dry. This happens to just be dry. But I'm just going to go ahead and smear some of that color around the edges of my pages. I just need to see a little spot of color, especially if I am going to leave those plants just like they're black and white. So whatever you choose to do here with color, this would be a great opportunity to do some watercolor background, or like I'm doing with the sponge here, you can do this over a stencil as well and give yourself some texture. But I'm just going to go ahead and give us the illusion here of kind of the outdoor light shining in this outdoor kind of a sky like really light blue. Can just kind of be careful here getting in between. It doesn't need to be thoroughly colored. In fact, I'm a big fan of just kind of letting it kind of be implied more than perfectly colored in. So there we go. So a little bit of that. And then what I wanted to lastly talk about was using alpha stickers. I went ahead and did this bottom page, but let's go ahead and talk about this. I have lots and lots of alpha stickers. I enjoy them very much. I have all sorts of different sizes and styles. Whatever you find, I'm sure you can mix and match all different kinds. I am a big fan of kind of mixing in my main words. Like in this case, I wanted to have that righteous word be the alphas, and then I'll use some smaller handwritten words. But of course, you can go all alpha as well. I think I have enough here to spell out the word wicked, so I'm going to go ahead and do that up top. And now you do need to be careful, because if you use any sort of gelato or distressed ink, I do want you to be very careful with your writing pens. All right, let's go ahead and keep going here. I've got all sorts of letters, so I think we're going to be okay, even if I have to. Sometimes I find myself with alpha stickers, if I run out of one, I look for one that has a very similar shape and just do some trimming. So if I have to do that, I will. But I think we're going to be okay here. Let's see. Should be able to fit right in here. These are alpha stickers. If you're wondering about these, they're so adorable. This is one of my favorite sets from Illustrated Faith, and they come in all different colors, and you can actually even buy their alpha stamps. These make really great alpha stickers for your Bible. I love how they dance. That's my favorite part about them. And when I say dance, I just mean that the shapes are so, they're not uniform, but that they really are flexible in how you use them. And they add a little bit of fun. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that there, and I'll finish this page up. You guys will see the finish at the end of the video, and I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson today. I will see you guys back here next week for another read through.